What's going on, you guys? Countless here. I wanted to go over a few things on Mesmer that I thought were plaguing the class. Starting with Virtuoso, then we'll touch on Mirage, and so on and so forth. I wrote a script so I can just get through this as fast as possible so I don't ramble on, so if I sound robotic, then that's definitely why. Or emotionless. But, yeah, let's just get to it. Starting with the grandmaster traits on Virtuoso, the glaring problem with all three of these is that the end result is exactly the same: stocking blades. You look at Mirage and Chrono, and each trait, regardless of how good or bad they are, did something exactly different to tailor a different playstyle. They created a problem for Virtuoso when they raised the shatter limit, and by blatantly putting the fix in place of every grandmaster, the specialization has effectively become a 2-option pick instead of 3. The solution I recommend is pretty simple. In Virtuoso, whenever you cast any ability that would summon an illusion/blade, you get 2 blades instead of 1. If you're almost doubling the amount of blades required in the kit, then you should double the amount of blades you get through casting phantasms or clones, etc. For example, if you cast a duelist and use main hand sword on any spec, but Virtuoso, your illusion limit would be 2 out of 3. On Virtuoso, it would be 4 out of 5. Clone generation should be organic by simply playing the class by default. Alright, moving on. I'll touch up on how to go forward with reworking the Grandmaster traits after we cover the next topic on Virtuoso, which is plagued with having the majority of its kit denied by any type of swirling winds or any sort of projectile denial, etc. Being denied your weapon abilities and traits is one thing, but being locked out of your class mechanic minus the F4 is something else entirely. The solution to this would make your shatters classified as beams, but would function exactly the same as it does now in terms of travel time, so it can be dodged accordingly. So that being said, you'd have to completely redesign the Grandmaster traits. Here's a few ideas to give different Mesmer builds some identity. I'll also give some ideas to other non-Grandmaster traits to mesh with said ideas. So Psychic Riposte is the first one, which right now is blocking or dodging attack stocks blades and causes your next blade song to be unblockable. Cooldown of 3 seconds. I changed it to blocking or dodging an attack causes your next shatter with a cast to be instant and unblockable, cooldown of 5 seconds. Now, granted, you can change these to whatever you want. I just feel like these are good with all of them, right? So if you guys have a problem with, the balance, that's essentially another story. You can talk about how you can balance or not balance these, or if you hate it or love it or whatever, right? So, yeah, blocking or dodging an attack causes your next shatter with a cast time to be instant unblockable, cooldown 5 seconds, take it or leave it. Infinite Forge, automatically stock blades while in combat, interval of 3 seconds, combat only. I changed it to Infinite Scope. Shatter range is now 1500 from 1200. I'll go back into that in a little bit. Blood Song. Blood Song is currently bleeding you apply, deals increased damage. Stock a blade after applying enough stacks of bleeding to foes. Blade increased 25%, bleeding stacks per blade 5. See, I changed Blood Song to Blade Turn Requiem now inflicts 2 bleeding per pulse. Bleeding duration is increased by 25%. Now, one of the main problems with Blood Song is that in order to actually have bleeding at all, you need to go into dueling and you need to spec into duelist discipline. But another main problem is that no Mesmer weapon by default inherently bleeds. So if you're going to make it to where, even though I'm essentially suggesting that you just scrap this idea in general, but just say, for example, that we don't, or that you don't. You need to make give Mesmer anything that bleeds if you're wanting to make a build that is reliant on bleed for clone generation, even though I don't think that clone generation should even have to be spec'd into, but just for argument's sake. Moving on, Jagged Mind, which is this one. Blade attacks inflict bleeding on critical hits. A percentage of your condition damage dealt heals you. Jagged Mind is now increased the bleeding duration from 1 to 3 seconds. Personally, I don't think that the percentage of your condition damage dealt heals you. The only reason I think they put this into the class is that we don't have distortion, and that they thought that somehow this little 3% rinkadink nonsense would give you some sort of sustain, I guess, but that's definitely not the case. So with distortion back in the class, I would probably say just get rid of the percentage altogether, and then just increase the bleeding duration from 1 to 3 seconds in general. So mental focus. Where's mental focus at? So mental focus. Strike damage is increased against foes within the range threshold. Bleh. This trait is unique per game mode. Damage increased 7%. Range threshold 600. So I changed it to strike damage is increased against foes beyond the range threshold. Range threshold 600. Damage increased 7%. If it's past 1200, damage increase 15%. So basically, it's just synergizing with Infinite Forge, in which I changed to increase the distance of your shatters from 1200 to 1500. Alright, General. Your shatters no longer require you to be facing your target while casting. I think this would be a good quality of life change that's desperately needed and prevents me from breaking my about face button whenever I'm trying to shatter anyways. Also the fact that there have been countless times, no pun intended, when I'm trying to shatter somebody that's directly in front of me, and it would go on a 3-second cooldown because for whatever reason it thinks I'm not facing the target. So this would just get rid of a lot of clunkiness within the build itself. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Okay, moving on. Utilities, Blade Renewal. This ability is now a stun break. Change nothing else on it. 1,000 cuts. Nobody uses 1,000 cuts, and there's a good reason why. It hits like paper. Alright, let's see. 1,000 cuts. This utility is now an AoE-based attack. 1,200 range, 240 radius, same duration. Damage, 15 instead of 10. At 1,500 damage, 45-second cooldown. 60 to 45, it's an AoE now. Like, the only other way that I could see 1,000 cuts staying the way it is, like, it casts for so long. Like, just speed up the entire animation of this skill if you want to not change it into an AoE or something like that. Because somebody can just go like this and dodge the entire thing. Like, there's no way you're ever getting this fucking thing off. Like, just change into an AoE or completely speed up the animation, increase the damage by a lot. Phantasmal Blades, which is this guy right here. Phantasmal Blades. Phantasms that successfully complete their launch, launch a blade at their target and grant you fury when they expire, blah, blah, blah. Basically, from this, I'm just increasing the damage base from 151 to 300. Weapons. Main hand sword. Main hand sword 1 through 3 are now classified as blades, which before they are not. So they can now synergize with things like Jagged Mind, for example, eat your heart out. So you can now stack bleeds accordingly. Alright, moving on. Blade Leap. So Blade Leap now, I don't even know why they have the text for swap, because it never works. Even if somebody was sitting near swap, like physically standing in it AFK, if you swap back to them, you would not give them a mob or anything like that. It just doesn't do anything. So my suggestion for this is the skill now mobilizes for 2.25 seconds if you land the initial hit, and remove the immob from swap in general. The swap in its current form never landed the immob, even if the target was literally standing still in your return position. Plus, this suggestion mimics the base functionality of the skill prior in terms of landing the immob in general. So like on any other skill on Mesmer, you would, send the clone at the target, swap, and then you would immob them at, the place of your target. Reversing the functionality, even if it did work, just is not ideal in almost any situation. Like, I'm pretty sure almost anybody that knows Mesmer would agree with me that changing the immob to land on the initial hit would be a lot better than the opposite, as what the tooltip suggests. Okay, dagger. Equip a dagger real quick. Dagger. Unstable Blade Storm adds a flip skill once cast to swap places with your Blade Storm. So pretty simple. You cast a Blade Storm, And then at any time that the Blade Storm is still active, you push a button, you swap places with the Blade Storm, essentially double dipping the damage and providing Mesmer a very good mobility utility. So say, for example, if you know you're going to get banged on, you can cast this, sacrifice some damage, do whatever you're doing, swap places, and then get out of harm's way. No. Storm Shift. Trade places with your unstable Blade Storm. I just called it Storm Shift on the flip skill. Flying Cutter, which is the auto attack. Send a blade of energy at your target. Hitting the same target multiple times invokes a flurry of blades on your target. So, hits to cause flurry. 3, I just marked it down to 2, so you can get a lot more flurry damage more often, which I think is good. And then the only other change I have so far on this list is Mirage. CMC's favorite class. Okay, going to Mirage. Here we go. So Mirage. Mirage has 2 dodges instead of 1. The ability to dodge while being stunned has been removed. So essentially, give us our dodge back. We get 2 dodges instead of 1. And then when we are CC'd, we literally cannot dodge while we are in stun. I think that's a fair trade. I think anybody that has any sort of common sense would agree with me, but who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Virtuoso in the upcoming patch, do I think distortion is great? Sure. Do I think it's needed? Not really. I mean, I can essentially go without it. I think there's a lot of things that they could fix on Virtuoso, like the, blade renewal being a stun break, or, maybe having some clone generation without speccing into, like, these just don't make sense. Like, Psychic Riposte, it's like, sure, it's powerful on paper, but what happens if you're not being targeted? You get nothing. Like, you just stand there and do nothing. Your damage output's low, your survivability is low, like, your utility isn't as long, like, everything just gets dumped down the drain, and I just don't think that's the right thing. But hey, I mean, who knows? Maybe, somebody with some common sense will watch this video and give this some consideration, which I surely hope. But yeah, that's essentially what I got. I don't want to keep the video too long, as it's probably over 10 minutes long. It's 12 minutes long. I am sorry to take up this much of your day. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, or on Reddit, or wherever I post this. So yeah, hopefully I made some sense into Mesmer, and to bringing it back into the limelight after a 2-point-something year retirement. I'm Countless. Bring your friends. Adios.